Hi Virgo and Virgo rising, this is your March 2017 forecast. So the big news this month is that Venus is going retrograde in Aries and it will be going retrograde in your 8th house. So let's look at some of the general significations of Venus retrograde before we go into the specifics for you. So when Venus goes retrograde, for everyone, relationship issues come to the fore. Venus is that planet of relationships, love, trust, intimacy, and money as well. So with Venus retrograde for everyone, it's about revisiting past relationship issues, finishing business in that regard. You may find that you're reconnecting with people from your past, either friends, partners, or lovers. So you may look somebody up or you may be looked up in turn. Venus retrograde, particularly for you in your 8th house, is a good time for renegotiating the terms of financial contracts and deals. So this is when you review them, evaluate them, and you'll be looking at all your investments quite carefully. It's also a good time to buy second-hand items, particularly if you know the true value of something and the seller doesn't. So Venus retrograde for you in the 8th house, this is of course the house of joint resources, properties shared with others, and resources shared with others in investments. So, like I said, you may be renegotiating the terms of loans. Long-standing legal matters can also be resolved, and if you need to change lawyers, then the dates when Venus goes retrograde and then again direct are good days to do this. With Venus retrograde in the 8th house, it may also be that you're feeling unsupported by a partner's resources. So, you may feel like you're going it alone a little bit. But on the other hand, Venus retrograde in the 8th house, this is also a very potent placement for intimacy and trust issues. So for really delving deep into your connections within your primary relationships, this is a very fruitful aspect for building more trust, more intimacy, more connectedness. And other than that, Venus retrograde in the 8th house is also a really good placement for healing the hurts of past relationships. So, you may find those issues come up and you've got the opportunity to resolve them at this time. Venus will be retrograde until the 15th of April and goes retrograde every 18 months. So let's look at the other placements this month. You've got the Sun in the 7th house of partnerships, and this is a very good placement, especially if you do consulting work, so you'll find it's a very busy month for you if that's the case, particularly because Mercury will also be in the 7th house of partnerships. So lots of communication, your mind is really on interactions with other people. It's an excellent time for consulting professionals in any field, and generally speaking for seeking advice in terms of your problems. So this isn't the time of year where you want to go it alone. You want to use other people as sounding boards, so you can get advice to help you resolve personal problems. So Mercury in the 7th house, also good for detachment on personal issues. So you're not feeling as viscerally involved with things, so this is good for having conversations, particularly with all significant others. So from the 20th of March, the Sun is moving into your 8th house, and again, this is where Venus is retrograde, so it puts the emphasis on joint resources, finances held with spouses, business partners. You may be considering a loan, or like I said with Venus retrograde, renegotiating the terms of financial arrangements. Because the 8th house also deals with fears and anxieties of mind, this is a good place to explore them through healing modalities through therapies, particularly because Mercury is also going to be in the 8th house from the 14th of March onwards. So Mercury in the 8th again lends you that detachment. So while you're thinking very intensely about certain things, it's not with such a deep emotional investment. So very constructive for working through things out, sounding them out. So psychotherapy and any kinds of healing modality is very useful in this respect. Of course, being the house of joint resources, it's a good time for discussions and negotiations around joint resources and, so investments shared with others, whether it's business or spousal partners. So Mars is going to be in your 8th house until the 10th of the month. And Mars in the 8th can show some conflict over joint resources, properties, and investments. So there can be a little acrimony in this respect. You may also find that a partner is spending more money than they should, or perhaps you're the one that's doing so. So there could be some disagreements about how to manage budgets. Generally speaking, Mars in the 8th, as with Venus in the 8th, it's not a good time to get a loan. You want to evaluate all your contracts, financial agreements, and that sort of thing, but not the time to make a change per se, just to look into these things. So, but with all this placement of planets in the 8th house, it's also a very good time for developing anything. So, behind the scenes. So, Mercury and the Sun in the 8th house as well as Mars, this is very good for developing ideas and projects that you want to take to teaching, publishing, and print when the Sun and Mercury move into your 9th house, which is, of course, the house of teaching, publishing, and print. So, very good for, work behind the scenes and that kind of investigation and research. So let's look at the aspects this month. On the 1st of March, the Sun conjuncts Neptune in your 7th house. And this is very good for sensitivity, altruism, and connection. So you're feeling more receptive to partners, generally speaking. In some cases, though, it can show a partner behaving in a Neptunian way. And that, of course, is drinking, substance abuse, and drugs. So a bit of dissolute behavior can come up, particularly with partners. And there can be an increased sensitivity to substances at this time. But generally speaking, the Sun and Neptune in the 7th house increases your empathy or empathetic connection to partners. So very useful in terms of fostering a connection with nearest and dearest. On the 2nd, Jupiter opposes Uranus, and this, of course, is a very important aspect in 2017. So Jupiter and Uranus in conflict, this shows a desire for a release from restricting obligations and circumstances, and very often when the aspect becomes exact, circumstances conspire in such a way that we do find ourselves released from bondage, as it were. And for you, this bondage is around financial agreements and also areas of give and take with others. So perhaps you've been feeling taken advantage of, or that things aren't working out fairly and equitably, and circumstances give you that boost to shrug off those commitments. You may also find that you have to give partners more freedom than usual because they may be seeing you as the source of restriction. So on the 6th, we've got the Sun conjuncting Mercury in your 7th house. So again, very good for initiating conversations, for having discussions, negotiations, and these could be contract discussions, business negotiations. Very good for getting those sorts of things off the ground. So lots of exchange and interchange of ideas, having discussions, restless communication. So in the 7th house, this is all around partnerships and could be in the area of consulting and business. So the Mercury and the Sun, which are still loosely conjunct, sextile Pluto on the 8th, and this between your 7th and your 5th houses. So this is very good for creative projects, business, personal business, so for reforming circumstances, reorganizing your affairs in a creative fashion, getting to the bottom of things. This aspect really favors deep thinking, but also creative thinking, getting to the truth of the matter. It's very useful for problem solving, getting to the bottom of things, and, reorganizing, restructuring, and reform, generally speaking. So on the 12th, we've got Mercury squaring Saturn between your 7th and your 4th houses. And this is a complicated aspect. And, it can show ideas, being thwarted a bit. So perhaps there's a bit of delays with communications. You're feeling misunderstood. So communications, generally speaking, under this transit can be a bit difficult. And this for you can be with family or with partners, business or romantic. So there can be some delays, bad news, that sort of thing. And also a bit of a depressive aspect. So the full moon is going to be on the 12th of March and in your 1st house in Virgo. So this is where you really want to work on your self-assertiveness. Up until now, with the preceding 2 weeks, you may have felt that your needs have been a bit neglected in favor of other people's. So you're feeling like you need some attention now. And this is really the time when you want to focus on your needs and balance those of other people's, still respectfully, of course. So it's that striking a balance between autonomy and dependence and looking after your own needs for a change. On the 17th, the Sun squares Saturn from the 7th to the 4th house. And this is another difficult but brief transit. And again, for you, this is going to come up with partners and family members. So this can raise some troubling issues. So you can lock horns with other people. Other people can be the source for you, particularly partners and family members, can be the source of restrictions, obstructions, barriers, difficulties, problems, sometimes with authorities. So with this aspect, you find duties and obligations are placed on you by those people or individuals. and correspondingly low energy to deal with them. So just shoulder through this one. On the 18th, we've got Mercury conjuncting Venus in your 8th house. And Mercury and Venus together in the 8th is really good for declarations of love. You know, you're feeling articulate with regards to your feelings and you're able to express them with great sensitivity. So this is really a time to connect with a loved one, to tell them how you feel about them, and to show them that you care. In the 8th house, this also favors financial and business dealings. On the 23rd, we've got Mercury squaring Pluto from your 8th to your 5th house. And this aspect can show a bit of obsessive thinking, preoccupation. You may find yourself forcing your point of view on people, provoking arguments. This can be around joint resources again, or it could be conflicts with children. On the 25th, we've got the Sun conjuncting Venus in your 8th house. And this can be a moment of relationship clarity. You could have a real aha moment or insight into the details of relationships, you know, fostering connections, you know, building intimacy and trust again, because this is really good for self-expression and creativity in relationships. And the 8th house does relate to that kind of intimacy and trust with partners, particularly significant partners. On the 28th, we've got a new moon in Aries in your 8th house. And there are going to be a lot of planets in this new moon. It's going to be the Sun and the Moon, and also Venus and Mercury, all in Aries along with Uranus. So this could be a very fruitful time to start a savings plan, consider taking out a loan, consolidating your resources. So this is also about give and take within partnerships. Because the 8th house also deals with self-mastery in the sense that we confront fears and anxieties of mind, this can be a very fruitful 2 weeks for you in terms of delving deep with therapy, healing modalities, any kind of consciousness raising work. So the month concludes with Jupiter squaring Pluto from your 2nd to your 5th house. And this can be very intense in terms of creativity, in terms of personal business. You can really be thinking about how you can make a difference with your personal business or creative projects that you're working on. You're looking for some kind of success and recognition in these areas, and this can really provide the push to do so. If you've enjoyed this forecast, please like and subscribe, and thanks so much for listening.